Hi there, my name is Mike Seitz. I'm one of the founders here at Barebottle. Today I'm going to show you how to put together one of these jockey boxes. It's a lot simpler than you might think. And if you do it right, you should have great flowing beer for your party or event or whatever. So let's do it. Foam is the enemy of any jockey box and any party because when it's too foamy, people can't get their beer, they can't enjoy it. So I'm going to teach you how to kill foam and make sure that it never happens. The first thing that you're going to do is get ice, get your beer cold. So we like to use these little 10-gallon buckets, 7-gallon, 10-gallon buckets. And then you're going to want to make sure that you get ice into and surrounding the bucket. What we're going to do is we're going to talk through all the different components that you need. The first is your jockey box here. This is a special one that we use here at Barebottle. It's a 2-tap jockey box, obviously, as you can tell. Some other things you'll need is you'll need a CO2 tank. You'll need a CO2 regulator that regulates the pressure coming out of the CO2 tank. You're also going to need your beer, which I've got down here. So I'll show you that. This is called a pony keg or a 5-gallon keg or a sixtel because it is 1/6 of a barrel of beer. It's also helpful to have a wrench and a screwdriver here to put everything together. This is called a coupler. This is what attaches to your keg. And then these hoses, one's for air and one's for the beer line. The next thing you're going to want to do is get your jockey box nice and cold. Now, the way that this works is that the beer comes out of the keg and it goes through. And if you can see inside here, there's these little coils inside. Those coils are going to be surrounded with ice water. That ice water is going to keep that beer nice and cold. That's the key to keeping foam down. If you don't have beer that's nice and cold, then you're going to have a lot of foam. But just pouring a bunch of ice inside this jockey box is not going to be enough. It's really important that at this moment you actually fill up the rest of the jockey box with water so that that ice can get nice and integrated into all the different parts of the coils inside the jockey box. Now I've got my jockey box filled up with ice and with water. It's all good to go. You can take the lid, put it right on there, and then snap it shut. And now we are ready to start connecting the air. This is a standard CO2 tank. This is a really large one. This is a 20-pounder. You could have a 5-pounder. You could have a 55-pounder. There's a bunch of different cylinder types. This is a standard one that we use for festivals and things like that. It's a little bit overkill for something at home, but here's what we got. So first thing we're going to do is hook up the regulator. This regulator, this one in particular, has 2 gauges. And I'll get this nice and close so you can see it. This gauge down here is going to tell you how much air is left inside this tank. If it's in this red or if it's down here, then you're going to know that your CO2 cylinder or gas tank is empty. Let's assume that that's well pressurized and you've got lots of CO2 left in your tank. This one's going to set for how much pressure you're going to apply to the beer to go through the jockey box. So let's attach that here. This is a really important point, and this is a part that a lot of people mess up. These threads here are going to fit perfectly on this little threaded coupler right here. So you're going to want to make sure that this gets on there really nice. Just use your fingers at first. It should go on like almost all of the way, just with like your finger pressure right there, okay? Only after you've got it on all the way with your finger pressure, then you're going to want to take out your crescent wrench and then tighten it just a little bit. And you're not looking for this to be like cranked down. You just want it to be on there nice and tight. And then you can turn on the CO2. So that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to open the CO2. That's with this little nozzle right here. You're going to open that valve right there. And I can hear this leaking just a little bit. So I'm going to tighten this just a tad. And now we're good to go. So that's nice and tight. So right here in this gauge, you can tell that there's still a lot of CO2 left in this tank. So that's good. We're good to go. And then here on this PSI reading, this is reading about 20 PSI. For our jockey boxes, 20 PSI is totally fine. So I'm just going to leave it right there. If you want to adjust that up or down, you can do that by changing this little screw right here. Let me see that. And you can see that this gauge is going up. If you want to back it all the way off, I recommend actually backing it all the way off and going it to 0 and then twisting it back in and then building it up to the PSI that you want. If you're doing this at home, I would recommend pushing PSI of about 11 to 12 PSI. If you're doing it through a jockey box like we are, especially with long hoses and we've got this really small beer line, I would recommend a PSI of like roughly 20 to 25. So that's how you get there, okay? All right, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna attach our coupler to the jockey box. So this is a coupler. It attaches to the top of your keg. And then these hoses go into this box. So the first thing we're gonna do is take this is the beer line. You can tell it's the beer line because it's clear. That connects using this quick disconnect into the jockey box. And remember, we've got ice in here, so we know that this is nice and cold. And then now we've got our coupler attached. So set this aside for a second. We're gonna take this gas line and connect it over here to our CO2 line. You can see it right there. Now, there's no CO2 moving through here right now because this valve is closed. So if I open this valve, that's gonna allow CO2 to run through here. Now, no beer's coming out because we haven't attached our keg yet. So that's what we're gonna do now. We've got our jockey box with our beer line connected down to the coupler, and then our gas line is connected up here to our regulator. This is open and on. We've got lots of good pressure, so we're feeling good. Okay, looking closely at this keg. Typically this will come with a cap. Take the cap off. And if you look inside this coupling fitting, you can see that there's these two pegs right here. These two pegs to the top of this keg spear will fit in perfectly to this coupler. There's a groove right there and then one on the other side. That's where it fits, okay? So what you're gonna wanna do is line up that pin right there with that little groove and make sure that it's flat. So it's nice and flat. Again, you can see that little pin right there. It's right there and right there. And that's gonna line up to that groove right there. You're gonna get it flat and then you're gonna give it like a quarter turn. Now that's in there nice and flat. If that looks like askew, if it looks like this, that does not look good. You're gonna wanna make sure that it looks completely flat and then give it a half turn. Okay. Now your coupler is inside, but is not yet engaged. You're gonna have to push this handle down in order to engage it. Before I do this, I always wanna look up at our jockey box, and right now our handle is open, so we're gonna close both handles so we don't get beer like squirting out. So come back down here. If you look inside here, you can see that this handle, there's a little pin. You're gonna wanna pull that pin out, push this down, and then let it go and it's gonna snap into place. That's called this is the engaged position. If you pull this out, this is unengaged. So you can also just push this down and it'll snap right into place. So that's an engaged coupler. All right, we're ready to go here. So one last check before we start turning things on. We've got our cylinder, we've got the valve open, it's pushing through here. You can tell there's lots of good pressure because this is above that red area. We're pushing it about 20 PSI. I showed you how to adjust that using this little knob right there, if you want to. For our jockey boxes, having it between 20 and 30 PSI is good. I'm just a little bit low, but that's okay. This valve is open. So it's open here, it's connected to our quick disconnect. It's pushing air down into the keg through this line, and it's coming up out of the coupler through this beer line. We're gonna follow that up. It's connected to our jockey box here with this. Again, inside the jockey box, we've got ice and we've got water. That's super important. And now we're ready to let this go. So the first time you pour this, it's probably gonna be a little bit foamy, but after a second or two, it will equalize. So you can see here, it's kind of getting the cleaner that was in there, and now it's starting to pour. And you can see it'll be foamy for just a little bit, and then it pours nice and clear. All right, so that's how you do a jockey box. If your beer is not cold, if it's not on ice like it is here, or if your jockey box here does not have ice and water in it, then you're gonna get foam. The other thing that you're gonna look out for is making sure that the pressure that's here is set correctly. If you're getting a lot of foam, you might wanna turn the pressure down. Again, on our jockey boxes, you're looking for like 20 to 30 PSI. If you're a kegerator at home, then you're looking for probably like 10 or 11 PSI. And that'll give you a really nice like amount of carbonation, but not too much. If you got any questions or comments, please hit me up in the comment section, and I'll answer anything else you guys want. Thanks so much, bye.